So, welcome and hello, everyone. Welcome to our May meeting of Mainline MUFON. We have Roland Michel Tremblay with us, and he's living in Wales. He's originally from Quebec, and I'm going to read a little bit about his introduction for you. Roland Michel Tremblay is an author and a researcher, and he introduces a groundbreaking new model of physics that finally bridges the gap between science and the supernatural. He basically discovered how a simple shift in our understanding of gravity and dimensions provides a new mechanical blueprint for how ultra-terrestrial craft may fly and how interdimensional entities manifest and why our map of the universe is about to probably change forever. He is an author, poet, researcher, and originally from Quebec City and currently based in Wales. For decades of research, rigorous research and independent study, he's developed a new comprehensive framework of theoretical physics designed to mechanically explain the deepest mysteries of cosmology, consciousness, and the paranormal. He's as we know, an independent researcher whose work operates on what we call the bleeding edge of theoretical physics and metaphysics. He's an author of numerous books and articles, but most notably the New Age Physics, where he tackles the subject of mainstream science they ignore. Rather than treating the phenomenon like UFO propulsion, interdimensional beings, and sudden cosmic anomalies as magic or hallucinations, Roland applies basic mechanical logic to explain how they actually work. And today he's going to be sharing what he calls his expansion theory, which is a new way of understanding gravity, light, and dimensions that promise to rewrite our map of the universe and decode technology of the beings that are visiting us. So please join me. I know we're all silenced, but please join me in welcoming Roland. And Roland, when you are ready, you can find your share screen. We tested this already, so I'm sure he's going to be able to find it.
Good evening, everyone. For me, it's
midnight, 12:30.
30 minutes past midnight, yes, in Wales. But so maybe good afternoon, and I don't know, some of you good morning. So let me find the share button and my presentation, and can everybody see this?
Yes, perfect.
Okay. So this is the title, Decoding Antigravity, Dimensions and Cosmic Illusions, a new physics framework for understanding UFOs and interdimensional beings and the true nature of reality. So, and this is the cover of my book, New Age Physics. And you can see the subtitles there. Physics breakthrough in UFOs, ultra-terrestrial technology, and interdimensional worlds. Alors, so I think everybody knows here that if there was a way to explain UFOs and interdimensional beings using Einstein, we would have figured it out by now. So until we get rid of Einstein, there's no way I think we can explain any of these phenomena. And here are just some examples of what physics cannot explain. Instant acceleration. The UAP is accelerating from 0 to Mach 20 with no propulsion, no exhaust, no sonic boom. Selective visibility. Some witnesses see craft or beings. Others standing beside them don't see them. Time anomalies, missing time. Abductees returning hours later while minutes passed, and vice versa. Gravity defiance. Craft hovering silently, then vanishing straight up against any known physics. Disappearance and reappearance. That's a good one. Objects phasing in and out of visibility as if switching between realities. And standard physics doesn't even try to answer any of these things. They just pretend they don't exist. Now, the crisis in standard physics is very serious. They call it the crisis in cosmology. And as you can see here, they are now saying that there are 68% of dark energy in the universe, 27% of dark matter, and 5% of ordinary matter. And you can, dark energy and dark matter have been invented because Einstein's equations don't work anymore. They cannot explain anything that we see right now in the sky. And if someone could find a solution to get rid of dark energy and dark matter, then that person, we will no longer need Einstein, basically. And so they've got a Big Bang. In my theory, there's no Big Bang, and there's no singularities, the thing that there is at the middle of the Big Bang. There is no where physics break down. There's no black holes, which require infinite density. Black holes are basically just dead dark stars or massive amount of matter clumped together, which does not emit any light. So of course it's dark. And also they mistook orbital mechanics. So the problem is that they think there is a black hole there because there are things orbiting around it, but they just don't understand exactly how orbital mechanics work. And that's another problem of dark energy, how to solve it. Relativity and quantum mechanics are also mutually incompatible. Relativity is for the cosmos, and quantum mechanics is for atoms or particle physics, and they are totally different and they are incompatible. And I think quantum gravity is trying to link them together, but it's not working. So, part one, expansion theory, a new foundation. What if gravity isn't a pulling force, nor a curvature of space-time, which is Einstein, pulling force is Newton, but simply expanding geometry, reducing distances? Now, expansion theory here is not about the expansion of the universe. The universe is probably very much static, but let's look at it here. Newton, Newton is an invisible attracting force emanating from mass. No mechanism ever found works mathematically but explains nothing. We have never found a power source that will actually could, attract each other, the planets or objects. And what is a force exactly? Einstein. Einstein says that the universe is a sheet of rubber, and then a massive star will actually make a big hole in the sheet, and everything rolls around it like in a funnel, following the space-time curvature. So that requires invisible dimensions, require dark matter and dark energy to balance, and there is the big crisis in cosmology. Expansion theory is all matter expands constantly at a constant rate. Space does not expand, so distances between surfaces constantly decrease as an acceleration. 1 meter becomes half a meter after everything doubles in size. That is gravity. Pure geometry, no forces. So, every particle, every object, every planet constantly expands. And you can see the universal expansion rate in the box in the bottom right corner. It's XA, called XA. It's 7.7.10 at minus 7 exponent. And this is not per second square, it's 1 underscore s second square. So that's the universal expansion rate. Everything expands at this rate. And every 19 minutes, everything doubles in size. But this is only happening behind the scenes. We cannot see this because we are also expanding. And this is why the distances between objects always shrinks. This is the reason, because everything is expanding. So this is how we explain gravity now. As you can see, Newtonian gravity, there is an attracting force below Einstein's space elevator, and expansion theory is that the planet is expanding. So an object is free floating in space, and the Earth is expanding by 4.9 meters per second upward to meet any object that is floating in space. So this is how we explain gravity, how we can explain it. And let's see, I think I've got another way to explain gravity later on, but that's basically how it works. Now, orbits, how does that work with expansion? That might give you a better idea. In expansion theory, orbits are not a mystery, they are an inevitable geometric result of expansion. Now, if you look at this image at the top, 1, 2, 3, you can see that at 1, they are very small on the left. And then at 2, they're a bit bigger. And at 3, they are very big. And you can see that every time they get bigger, as time goes by, after 3 seconds, the distance between them reduces or shrinks. And you can see on the right what it is that we would see when we cannot see the expansion, because we are also expanding. And this is what the relative motion effect is in our resulting reality from what is happening behind the scenes. And as you can see, it creates a, no, a natural orbit effect. And this is why things are orbiting each other. Now, Newton hasn't, there's nothing like that in Newton, where we could actually, for Newton, is elastic bands and everything is kind of and then Einstein is, as I said, the rubber sheet. But this is how it works. And the rubber sheet still connects objects together. And Newton, it's supposed to be an attractive force at the distance. Here is completely just geometry. And as long as things are moving away. Now I can show you what an orbit is. Now you can see an orbit there is expanding the expanding planet approaching coasting object. So an object is moving towards the Earth in a straight line, it's moving away, and the Earth is expanding toward it. And this is why the object doesn't go away. This is why it always stays here. At the bottom, you can see expanding planet approaching faster object. And as the object is moving away, the planet is expanding. And as you can see at the top, it creates the natural orbit effect. And so the object stays in place around the Earth at the same place in a geostationary orbit because it matches the rotation of the Earth. And if it was not going fast enough, it will be a parabolic path. As you can see, it will far. And because this is an acceleration, you can see the parabolic. This is why it's a parabolic path. So these are orbits. Behind the scenes, the satellites move away from Earth in a straight line, fast enough to escape the planet's expansion. Once expansion is hidden from view, what remains is a stable orbit. No centripetal force, no pulling, no pushing. The orbit is a relative motion effect of the geometry of expansion. And this new equation, v square multiplied by r equal k, is basically something that we could find out or see. It's the geometric orbit equation by looking at the data or astronomical data. And we can see that this equation works very well. So depending on the speed of an object squared and multiplied by its distance from the sun, for example, you will get k. So every planet have got the same k because it depends on the orbited body. And that's so we can actually the distance that it will be from the sun depends entirely on their velocity or vice versa. Their velocity will actually set their distance. So that's and that replaces Newton's equations for orbits. It's as simple as that. And it is embedded within Newton's equations, but he's complicated everything by adding mass when there is no need to. Everything is geometry based. Right. Why gravity accelerates? Two distance effects. Now you can see here, it's not very obvious. Maybe people will want to come back to that later, but there is two effects in gravity. There is the absolute decrease in distance because everything expands at a constant rate. And there is a further relative decrease in distance, which creates the acceleration because space does not expand with the objects. So what was one meter before, after everything has doubled in size, is half a meter. And this is a compounding effect. So you can see here that originally there is two objects and there is 6 radii of separation. And it decreased to 4 original radii after they doubled in size. But because they have doubled in size and space didn't, there's now only 2 radii separating them. And this is what we see behind the scene when we can see the expansion. And below is the original separation before doubling, which is 6 radii of separation. This is what we see when we can't see the expansion. And after the doubling, there is only now 2 radii of separation. So this is why gravity accelerates. None requires any force. Both are purely geometric consequences of expansion. And that's very interesting. This is why the fall of a slinky appears to defy Newton. The base floats until the Earth expansion catches it. I'm going to show you a proof of the theory. So let me see if I can get that. Now you're going to see a slinky. And the slinky is the base of the slinky, you can see how it falls. And when you slow down the video, and you will see that the base of the slinky doesn't go down. until the top has reached the bottom and then it goes down. And this guy there, they are quite obsessed with this problem. And so they have tried that with massive big slinky drop from the fifth floor of a building. And it takes forever for the top to get to the bottom. And for several seconds, it's just levitating in the air. And there's no way Einstein or Newton can explain that because there is no way things can levitate in physics. It will start falling immediately. So let me just show you that.
I couldn't be sure. Too fast. Yeah. To really appreciate the physics involved, you need to see it in slow motion. Oh, great. That's weird.
So let me see. Let me get back. Oh, can you see the presentation? Can you see? Are you back to the presentation?
No, we're still seeing the slinking video, but I think that was just in slow motion, right? What
Yes.
what you showed us, right?
Yes. And there are many more videos like that on YouTube if people want to see. Now let me get back to the presentation. There, share. So what happened there? It's that the base of the slinky, when a slinky actually is actually stretched and you let go of both ends, what happens is that both ends come back together. And this is what's happening behind the scenes that we cannot see. So because the slinky is being pulled up because it's being held before we let it go, then the slinky is not, all the rings are like not exactly equals, the coils. So when you let go of the slinky, what is happening is that the bottom of the slinky is going up towards the top, and the top is going down towards the bottom. But because it was held and the stretch of the slinky depended on the expansion of the Earth in the first place, the Earth is expanding exactly at the same rate as the slinky is going up. So we see it immobile. So it's not levitating. It's just that the Earth is expanding at the same rate as the slinky is going back. The base is going up, and that's why we only see. And because the stretch was more towards the bottom, the top is going down twice faster. So that we see it going down very fast. But behind the scene, the top is not even moving. It's actually immobile. And the slinky is going back up because it was already moving. The whole slinky was moving upwards. And so it's the center of mass gets to the top. So the top doesn't get back to the center of mass. So that's quite interesting. There is this proves basically the theory that levitation is possible for a slinky that you drop because of how the physics works. So if anyone wants to try to explain this from the point of view of Einstein or Newton, and they have tried in that video I just showed you, they try to explain to you how it can be explained. None of it will convince anybody. So let's move to the next. What is light? The biggest mistakes in physics. So in Einstein, light is photons. Photons have no mass. The speed of light, c, is constant. C is the same for all observers. This is relative to the point of view. And energy does not equal matter. Problems. Massless things don't have momentum. Can't have momentum because they don't have any mass. And yet the light can propel spacecraft when you actually use light to push things. So it's got momentum, motion. A photoelectric effect releases electrons from light hitting metal. Why? But I'll explain later that it's not the metal. If you shine lights on a piece of metal in a capacitor, this is what Einstein got his Nobel Prize for. There are electrons that are actually getting out of the metal, but it's not. It comes from the light itself. C, constant only in a vacuum, but vacuums don't really exist. So that's a standard model. Expansion theory. Light is now made of clusters of electrons. So light is matter. Any kind of energy phenomena is actually matter in motion. So that's a big difference. Light is now clusters of electrons. And the bigger they are, the smaller they are, it corresponds to the different frequencies of the light, the colors, and also infrared, visible light, ultraviolet. So the size of the clusters of electrons. So clusters have mass. So now the light has mass. Speed is variable. Now, if you get rid of Einstein, who says that the speed of light is constant and that time is relative, then it's the opposite. Time is actually now constant, and it is the speed of light which is accelerating, variable, and relative. Relative to the point of view of when it was launched at the origin, which is launched at the speed of light c. And then gravity takes over. So what happens is that as things expand, distances shrink. So when light is finally free to go, it accelerates constantly forever because everything expands. So the further away the light comes from or arrives at us, the faster the speed of light will be by the time it reaches us. And we've never really been able to measure that the speed of light is accelerating because you will need to measure that on very long distances. And here on Earth, we have only measured short distances, but you can see it in the Pioneer anomaly because it's far enough in the solar system. It's at the edge, maybe even out of the solar system. If you look at the Pioneer anomaly, which they could not understand why it seems to be decelerating, it's because it's not the Pioneer, it's not the craft, it's the speed of light which is accelerating, which makes it looks like the craft is decelerating. And there's a lot of proofs that the speed of light is arriving at us much faster than C. I'm not going to mention to you all the recent discoveries, but there are proofs and they are in my articles. So this immediately explains why light has momentum, because it has mass. The photoelectric effect is the electrons themselves that are decomposed when it hits the plate. Gravitational lensing. Now, if light is made of matter, they are exactly like asteroids in space. And so when they meet an object, they will go into a partial orbit around it. And this is why a light will bend around the sun, for example, when it goes there. It's exactly like it's a partial orbit because it's going too fast to enter an orbit. And this eliminates the need for dark energy, but I'll explain that afterwards. And for solar panels, it's the same. It's the light itself that is decomposed by the semiconductors panels. It's not the panels themselves, and it's not a very inefficient. It's a very inefficient technology. And once you understand how light works, you can develop much better technology. And let me see if there's anything else. Right, E equal mc square. It's now, we need to revert back to what the kinetic energy equation is. You can see in the black box at the bottom. Because the speed of light is not constant anymore, we have to use the kinetic energy equation, which is Ek equal half mv square. E equal mc square, anyway, comes from the momentum equations for light. And if you look carefully about the derivation, you will understand that that equation is when light is launched and then reflected back by bouncing on a reflective surface. So really, it should have been half mc square. And then so that's why that it should be superseded by Ek equal half mv square or Ek equal mv square for reflective surfaces, which is the kinetic energy equation which existed long before Einstein. So applied to electron clusters, mass, and final velocity. So that's it for E equal mc square. Now, how do we solve the problem of dark energy? I just explained to you that when light is accelerating from wherever. Okay, dark energy. First, the problem is when they look at light, they look at redshifts, and these redshifts is or blue shifts is for them is an indication of where that light came from, the location of the object, how fast that object is going, and or what's the third thing? Location, how fast it's going in direction of motion. So they think that the universe is basically expanding extremely fast at ever increasing speeds. And they could not explain this because there is no possible way to explain that. So they said, oh, okay, there's dark energy, and the dark energy is pushing these galaxies away from us, and the further away they are, the faster they are moving away from us, and technically faster than the speed of light. But with relativity, they can explain, oh no, it's not going faster than the speed of light when clearly it is. So that's the problem with the dark energy. So you can see standard interpretation. The galaxy is moving away from us. Speed of light is, and the whole problem of this is because the speed of light must be constant, which means it's the galaxies moving away. As soon as you get rid of this problem, that the speed of light is accelerating towards us, suddenly you realize that it is not the galaxies moving away from us at greater speeds. What is happening here is that it's the speed of light accelerating towards us. And the further away the speed of light comes from, the more time it had to accelerate before it reached us. So what's going on there is that we think that the further away the galaxies are, the faster they are moving away from us. So you see, as soon as you get rid of Einstein, I don't understand why no one thought of this, but as soon as you get rid of Einstein and the speed of light is no longer constant, it solves that problem. And it was an obvious one. I can't believe, no one thought of it first. I couldn't find anything online about that. If someone did find that, I couldn't find it. So the redshifts are no longer any indication of velocity, direction of motion, or of the distance. So you can see that we are really like in a trouble now because we cannot really tell where things are and how fast they are going or the direction of motions because redshift is not like the Doppler shift in sound. Totally different. It's light. And so, and it's only an indication of, how long or tired that light is because it may have taken a long time to run. It may still give us an idea, but nothing like what they're thinking. So also the universe is probably not everything in the universe is probably not as far as we think. When you hear these massive numbers, and things are probably not as large as they say, like they say, oh, that sun is 300 times the size of our sun. This is probably also incorrect. And there are ways to measure all these things now with the expansion theory, but you can find that about that in my um, articles. Now, I couldn't place that gravity equation anywhere else, but this comes from Mark McCutcheon's his book, The Final Theory, who actually developed the key concepts of expansion theory upon which all my theories are based. But our theories are diverging now, especially since I've started working with AI, and then the AI found all the solutions to my problems, and so that's the equation. So to measure the new distance or the changing distance between two expanding objects, which is d, you get d, the original distance, minus the number of seconds squared, multiplied by the expansion, expansion rate, universal expansion rate, xa, and you multiply that by r1 plus r2, which is the radius of both objects. So you see here we use the size of the objects from surface to surface instead of mass for Newton and Einstein, especially Newton, because his equation has got plus mass 1 plus mass 2. And this is divided by 1 plus n2, which is 1 plus the time square multiplied by the expansion rate. Now, this bottom equation there is why the acceleration in the gravity exists. This is the further relative decrease in distance due to space not expanding. So let's move on. Dark matter. Now I just showed you the solution for dark energy. Now I'm going to show you what dark matter is. Dark matter is that if you take the galaxy and you get all the solar systems that are rotating around the galactic center, you realize that they are moving way too fast to account for what is at the middle of the galaxy, which they say is supermassive black holes, but they don't exist anymore in expansion theory. What they are basically the nucleus is I'll come back to you later about that one. But there's a nucleus is basically a massive big sun, if you want. And I can tell you already, it's made probably of about 1,836 solar systems, probably all orbiting each other in some sort of interesting kind of dense um, uh, structure, and you can have many of those. So, so, so they couldn't understand, they couldn't explain why all these solar systems were moving much faster than they should. So they said, right, there's dark matter everywhere. There's missing matter. We saw the number at the beginning was 67% or 27%, I can't remember. Let me see. Okay, dark matter is 27%, right? So, so they say that there are halos at the edge of the galaxy that can explain this, and there's not enough mass in the center to explain the orbital mechanics of all the solar system. So how do we solve that? So later on, I'm going to explain to you that the universe is a fractal universe. What is at the large scale, the cosmic scale, is identical to what's at the atomic scale. This is like my biggest claim. Everybody thinks I'm totally crazy, but working with the AI, I proved this by comparing ratios between the two scales. But so it gives us some ideas about how, by looking at the atomic scale, the small scale, and looking at the larger scales, it gives us an idea about what's going on between the two scales. And in quantum mechanics, the atoms has got what we call electron shells, and the electron shells is like well, usually there are not that many electrons in an atom. There are only a few, but they form into shells, and these shells, the other shells orbit these shells. So if you put this into the what do you call it, the galaxy, you realize that an electron shell or a star shell is actually all the solar systems that are in the middle of the galaxy. Altogether, all of these solar systems is like a nested orbital ring. And so the stars that are at the edge of solar systems are not orbiting the galactic center. That was the problem. Orbital mechanics is that they will orbit that big objects of billions of solar systems. There are between 200 to 400 billion solar systems in the galaxy, and our galaxy is a small one. But later on, I will show you that it's probably nothing like that. But so here we have solved the problem of dark matter. The missing matter was just the solar systems that are all from the midpoint of the galaxy to the center, and this is a massive object that everything is orbiting around instead of orbiting around the galactic center. Now this is also quite obvious. I don't quite understand why they invented a missing matter that nobody can see or explain when really there were so many solar systems in the galaxy that this is matter. But because they were stuck with Newton's equations of how to calculate orbits, they couldn't actually see that these solar systems at the edge were not orbiting the central point. They were orbiting, a massive number of them that actually forms into these kind of nested orbital rings. Now, let me see if there is anything else. Now, that's very interesting because, as I told you, it's the same at the atomic scale. Now, if they are the same at the atomic scale, an atom doesn't have 2, 3, 16 electrons. It must have billions of electrons, exactly like there is in the galaxy. Now, if there are billions of electrons inside the atoms, and we have never really seen electrons, so we don't really know, it's all measured with energy levels. So, and a certain energy level for us, they say it's 1 electron, but actually it's probably millions, if not billions. So we can prove this because when you look at how we can't use Newton at the atomic scale within an atom, we use Coulomb's law. And if you use Coulomb's law, I'm going to show you what the equations look like. Now, you can see in the middle of the screen that Newton's equation for the galaxy, it is the gravitational force equal G, which is his main constant, mass 1 multiplied by mass 2 divided by R2, which is the distance. So the force is basically a constant multiplied by the M1 and M2, which is the mass of the two objects, divided by their distance. And Coulomb law at the atomic scale, it is the gravitational, it's the electric charge or the electric force or electromagnetism. It's K, which is also his own constant, which is massive compared to Newton, which is G, and it's the charge 1 and multiplied by charge 2 and then divided by the distance. So you can see they are identical. But what happens is that as soon as you say that there are billions of electrons within an atom, and you actually use Newton instead, which we couldn't do before because they thought there was only a few electrons, and at the atomic scale, there is also a problem of missing mass, would you believe? If they actually measure the mass of everything in an atom and they put it all together, something there's missing mass there too, and they just didn't call it dark matter. But now there are billions of electrons, so that explains that problem as well. But if you use Newton for the mass, the mass of billions of electrons in an electron shell, you get the exact same results as Coulomb. Can you believe that? Now, I don't know if you understand what this means, but it means that Coulomb and Newton, which is Newton is gravity and Coulomb is the electromagnetic force, electromagnetism, which is two of the fundamental forces of nature, is the same thing. If you use Newton, who was using energy levels, the charges, and you can see it's the same equation, and his constant was massive because charges are very small compared to mass. So that's why Newton's G is actually very small. It gives exact same result. Coulomb was calculating energy, the billions of electrons within the atom without realizing, because he was dealing with energy levels, so he had no idea how many electrons there were there. But yes, and without using Coulomb at all, just by trying to assess what is the mass of, an electron shell if there are billions of electrons, you get the exact same result. So this is this is the theory of everything. It unifies, and everybody can verify this. Any of my articles on Substack, Medium, LinkedIn, and Patreon, there is a link to my entire discussion with Gemini Pro 2.5, where we discussed all these things, we made all the calculations, and we verified all this. So basically, gravity and electromagnetism is unified. That has been the main goal of science since forever. And nobody has ever heard of this, because if you're wondering why it has not taken over the world by storm, it's because I've written these articles in November, December. This is when they were published. I still have 13 or 14 to publish that I had to try to finish before this presentation, but they are not published yet. But there is a link at the end, and you can have all the articles, the 35 articles, even though they're not published yet. They are in that doc file or PDF if you want to read them. So that's it basically for and then you can see now there are two other fundamental forces of nature, which is a strong nuclear force, but this is eliminated. This force was to actually explain why the protons and neutrons within the atoms were flying apart. So they said, oh, there must be a strong nuclear force keeping them together. But if it's exactly the same as a galaxy, you can see that there's no need for a strong nuclear force. These solar systems and whatever is in the middle, the supermassive black hole or the massive star, or basically cosmic nucleons. They are cosmic protons and cosmic neutrons, exactly like in the atom, the nucleus. They're not flying apart. It's just they are orbiting each other, and they are in orbital mechanics, and that's how they can stay together. So the strong nuclear force is gone, and the weak nuclear force was not really a force of nature. If you look at what it is, it's just radioactive decay, and it's basically some particles getting out of the atoms, and this is what radiation is. We have the same thing in the galaxy. Sometimes out of the center, when there are some reactions, or there are solar systems that are ejected at high speeds, at hyper velocity, and you will get out of the solar system. So this is the same at that scale. We've got radiation there too. Now let me go back to before. So missing mass in atom, okay, gravity, okay, I just explained that. Let's not spend too much time on this. Okay, now what is electromagnetism? This is a question that fascinates people, but there's nothing very interesting about it. Now, what is interesting is that electrons can actually grow in size and they can shrink. Because of fractal universe, an electron is a solar system. So if an atom is a galaxy, then an electron is a solar system. So electrons have got like planets orbiting inside them, which I said they were neutrinos because that's the smaller particle below the electrons. And I call the sun a superneutrino, the planets neutrinos, and moons are subneutrinos. So what happens is that all these electrons can orbit together and they can bond together exactly like atoms do to form molecules. And what magnetic fields are, if lights are clusters of electrons, so groups of electrons, electromagnetisms are clouds of electrons. And as you can see in these two images, this is what happens between objects that, are when you put static electricity, then you can see that the electrons can grow in size and they can shrink. And they can grow because the neutrinos, which is the planets, are going much faster. So when that happens, all the orbits enlarge. And if you've got billions of them, then you've got kind of clouds of expanding or shrinking electrons, billions of them. So why there is an attractive force and there is a repulsive force is that if the density of the clouds that are meeting in the middle, as you can see in the second image, then they will push each other. And this is why there will be a repulsive force. And if there actually is an attractive force, is that if they are of a different density, the denser clouds will actually shrink back and then the objects will get together. They are like a bridge of electrons and they stay connected. So it's like a balloon that you will actually put on your hair and put on the wall, and then it will stay there because the bridge of electrons will actually shrink back and they will remain connected because they're all bonded together by the neutrinos that orbit within the electrons and between the electrons to bond them together. So this is, and if the Franklin experiment of two rods, everybody's done that in class, glass rod and I can't remember, wax rod. One was positively charged, one was negatively charged, and on ropes, and they can stay stuck together, or they can repel, or they can just remain immobile. So if there is um, they can remain also immobile, and then this is what static electricity is. Everything still expands in the background, but from our point of view, they remain exactly like that. That's why there's no repulsions or attractions. It can stay like that indefinitely. So, static electricity is electrons hold steady, balanced, not growing or shrinking. And the attractions, electrons in the cloud all shrink simultaneously. They pull inward, reducing the distance between everything connected. And repulsion is electrons in a cloud all grow simultaneously. They push outward against each other and anything nearby. And electricity are basically just surplus of electrons when you actually clear them from atoms. And now, atoms, we know from the theory, we know there are billions of electrons in atoms. It didn't make much sense in electricity that atoms will have only a few electrons because you will need a lot of atoms and a lot of molecules to get some electricity done. But if each of them have got billions of electrons, then that makes much more sense. That's why you can produce a lot of electricity very quickly. And there are much better ways than what we're doing right now. So it's just electrons that will actually go around a filament or a wire of copper or something because that's very well, it's a good conductor of electricity. And so we just get them to go into circuits and, power appliances. And magnetism is a rotating cloud of electrons of different densities meeting each other, equalizing in size from pole to pole. So if the way electrons move, of course, like in the batteries, is if there is a lot of electrons in one side and none in the other, they will always try to balance out and then they will actually equalize. And the reason for that is because of the natural orbit effect of the geometry of expansion. because the way they move is always about the orbits between all of them, and so they will always try to balance each other out and fill all the space. Right. Gravitational lensing, the force topography of the universe. Now, you probably are familiar with this. This is the image that you see there is Einstein's cross. Now, I think it's a quasar, or yeah, that we see 4 times. It's the same one. And you can see the shape is quite interesting. It's kind of a trapezium. If you look now at any image of the sky, I'm telling you, you will see, after what I'm going to tell you, you're going to see this so obviously that I cannot believe nobody's seen this. But this is like, okay, there is some sort of galaxy in the middle. The light has met that galaxy in the middle, and the light has split in 4 different directions. And now we're seeing 4 times the same object. And not only that, but because there is a time dilation effect with gravity within Einstein, if that thing was about to explode, like if it was a supernova, if it was going to explode, they will not explode at the same time. They can explode at 10 years difference. So they could explode all at different times. So because the time dilation and the path was longer, and one of the beam has arrived to us much later. So, light is made of electron clusters moving in a helical or corkscrew path through space. Now, light, for me, in expansion theory, is not moving in a straight line. First of all, it's moving in a twisting helix fashion, a corkscrew. That explains DNA and RNA, and because everything moves, and not just light. It is known already for electromagnetism, but it's the same also for light. And because the atomic scale is the same as the cosmic scale, everything in the universe is also moving in an helical corkscrew fashion. And so the solar system is moving that way. And so the solar system is basically doing a big circle in the solar system, and because it's moving in a corkscrew fashion, and the Earth has managed to become a satellite of the Sun, and in a geostationary orbit. So it may very well be that Tycho Brahe's model of the solar system is correct. But this wasn't supposed to be part of my presentation. If you are interested in this, a new solar system model, you can read my articles. Now, when this helical beam encounters a massive foreground object, it's split, the light, the light beam. One half is a slingshot is accelerated. Now, the speed of light accelerates. So when light encounters a galaxy or even a star, the light will split at least twice or maybe 4 times, and maybe even, depending on the angle, it could be a massive, huge wheel of objects. And you can see that on many photos. You just look, you can see the same patterns. But the thing is, they can be of different size. They can be quite a distance away from each other. They actually could be of a different color because they are blue shifted or red shifted if they are accelerated or slowed down. And also they can even be mirrored. So if we put the simulator and look at images, we can see sometimes the same object, something like 20 times. And it's very difficult when it's just one object. It's actually, you need a pattern when you see 4 like that. And if you look at many images, you will see a trapezium like that, and then you will see another trapezium like that, but rotated, just beside it. And it even works with nebulas. If you look at the Orion Nebula, there is what is called the Running Man Nebula next to it, and some sort of small nebula just glued to the Orion Nebula. It's all the same nebula. We are seeing it 3 times, and if you look carefully, you'll see that this Running Man on some of the photos is there in all 3. And there is a nebula called the North America Nebula. I'm not sure if you knew that, and it looks exactly like the United States and North America, actually, Canada, United States, and Central America. And next to it, there is the Pelican Nebula, and you can see that it's the same nebula, but we've rotated and perhaps even reversed. And there are those red spots behind it, below it, and I think it's probably also the same thing. So when this helical beam encounters a massive foreground object, it splits. One half is accelerated, one half is decelerated, red shifted, it arrives later, the other one is blue shifted, it arrives sooner. And now that's very interesting. You know that in the solar system, most solar systems are binary star systems, and ours just got one sun. What's going on here? Why are we so exceptional? They are probably all just solar systems that are single star as well. The problem is that the speed of light must have encountered something along the way for almost all of the stars. The light has split exactly like Einstein shows with the Einstein cross, and it's two beams of light coming together. But since they're moving in a corkscrew fashion, we think they are two stars, and we think that they are in a binary stars as motion when it's not the case. There is only one star. And then these two stars can be multiplied and multiplied and multiplied. So sometimes we can see 50 objects and it's probably just one star. So this is quite important. This has changed completely the whole topography of the universe. And with that now with the light that's accelerating and decelerating like that and constantly accelerating because of gravity, we don't even know where things are, and we don't even know which one is the real object. And so it's all very interesting. But there are ways to get back to some sort of normality. It's all explained in the articles. Now, I think I've said enough about this. So, phew, yeah, there's probably much less matter in the universe than thought. It's all a mirror. Now, the four forces of nature, I think I've covered it earlier. Now, the fractal universe, this is what I was talking to you about. Atoms and galaxies are the same structure at different scales. Neutrinos are basically moon, planet, sun. Electrons are solar system. Atoms are galaxies. Molecules are galaxy clusters. Now, that's quite interesting. And proton and neutrons are galactic nucleus, like Sagittarius A star. I'm not sure how you say it in English, but this is what a proton or neutron is the supermassive black holes in the middle of our galaxy, and it's actually a massive kind of star. It's a cosmic proton or neutron, and as I said, they are made of 136 solar systems each. So in our galaxy, there's only one, but you know, in Andromeda, there are a few. There could be up to, I think there could be up to 46. Now, the galaxy clusters, that means that when we look at the sky and we see a whole bunch of galaxies together, they may not necessarily be a repetition of the same galaxy. They may actually be astromolecules. They could be bounded together by solar systems, you know, the galaxies, because they are atoms, and they must be forming astromolecules. Now, you say, yeah, this is really crazy. But here's the proof one at the bottom. If you calculate the mass ratio of the nucleus of the Milky Way, as I said, there was only one in our solar system, Sagittarius A plus star. And if you look at the Andromeda, which has got the equivalent of 46 times the mass of our galaxy, so if you do the ratio for this, one divided by the other, you get 0.0307. And if you take an hydrogen, because since there is only one supermassive black holes in our galaxy, our galaxy must be a hydrogen atom. So you've got only one, and if you take the nucleus mass of a hydrogen, and because Andromeda galaxy must have at least 46, I think, um, um, cosmic nucleons, if you want, it must be sulfur, and together they form a molecule of basically sulfur, which the smelly thing. So, and the ratio of that, of the nucleus mass of hydrogen and sulfur, is 0.0314. So there's a 97% match. This is extraordinary. It's almost like unbelievable. It was very difficult to do this because it's very difficult to know the size of things at either one or the other scale. And you know, when you look at when you try to establish what is the radius of an atom, there's the Bohr radius, the covalent radius, there is also a Schwarzschild radius. So it will take us a while to figure all these things out because we need to establish the size of things or maybe use mass instead. Like the second proof, there is something very well known in physics that the proton to electron mass ratio is basically for one proton you get 1,836 electrons. And that matches as well with Sagittarius A, our supermassive black hole, to an average solar system. Is a 95.6% match. So if people were to start doing all these comparisons of ratios between the two scales, they will realize that they are completely the same. And so this is a fractal universe we're living in. And like a tree has got different branches, and then the branches have got little branches, and it's what a fractal is, and it's basically replicated. And this means that if it's a fractal, on top of the cosmic scale, there must be an even higher scale. And as I said earlier, the atoms are forming astromolecules, but then what is it forming at a higher scale? So this is the matter of a higher scale. And if you're religious, then it's probably God. And that's why God is everywhere, because we are just a very, very small part of God. Or maybe a being, made of the universe is God. But it could also be, a potato, a fish, a rock. A rock, it might not even be biological. So we probably will never know unless, someone tells us, someone who really has a very good source and knows all about it. And then at the atomic scale as well, there is no way that all the expansion theory would work if there was not a scale even smaller than the atomic scale, which means that even the neutrinos, which are planets, are divisible, like our planet is divided in smaller particles from another scale. So this will probably keep you awake at night trying to figure all this out in your mind. Time is constant. Einstein's proof reinterpreted. Now, GPS satellites, like, okay, now, Einstein had a massive amount of big proof, yeah? Nobody can say Einstein is wrong because, hey, there is a time difference in the satellites going around the Earth, and he's got these perfect little equations, and we can calculate it so well, there's no way Einstein was wrong. And there is also the precession of Mercury, but as I explained to you, with the helical motion of the solar system, it explains perfectly the precession of Mercury without the need for Einstein. But here is the big proof of Einstein about the satellites. And it turns out, and you should see the equations, it's frightening. I spent many nights trying to figure out about Einstein's equations. What was he trying to measure, or what was he exactly measuring with this? It's amazing that, but I finally kind of figured it out. But there is a much easier way to calculate this time difference between satellites. It's that it's not special relativity. It's that time runs slower near gravity, faster, far from it. So there is general relativity, which is about gravity. So the higher or the lower the satellite is, it will actually go faster or slower because gravity affects the speed of things. And there is also um, special relativity. Times also run slower at high speed. The faster you go, the slower the time runs. I think pretty much probably everybody knows that. So the result is that the clocks are at different altitudes and speed tick at generally different rates. Time itself differs per observer. Now, if that was true, is that the time runs differently for every observer, then how do planetary orbits, our basis for measuring time, stay consistent for all these people? Because everybody's got a different time rates because it's all relative to your point of view. So the star should be running at different rates. The planets must be running at a different rate around the sun for everybody. So that wouldn't make any sense. The entire universe would be wrecked. In expansion theory, it's much simpler than that. What the problem was is that, yes, there is a change in the time rates in the satellites, as they say, and with the International Space Station, but it is not due to the relativity of time. It's actually due to speed and gravity do affect the cesium atoms in clocks. So it's just a local effect within the clocks itself. It alters the time rates within, it's just a mechanical effect. It's not something about, the whole universe and the whole time is different. So atomic clocks are resonant mechanical systems. Changing their energy state, altitudinal speed, alters cesium oscillation frequency. Purely physical, not time itself. And this is a new equation that replaces Einstein. I can't believe I came up, the AI basically came up with this. It's quite amazing what AI can do now But we talked a lot about this to get to this point, but it depends on potential energy difference between the clock that is on the ground and one that is in orbit, and this is what corresponds to gravity, and also the kinetic energy, which is the orbital speed. So that was special relativity for Einstein. And A and B are two constants of nature, and you can measure exactly the time race difference depending on the altitude of the satellite and its speed. And you can verify that it works for GPS and the International Space Station. So that's the big proof of Einstein gone. The clock runs differently. Time itself does not. Lensing, Einstein needs time dilation. I explained to you the time dilation in the gravitational lensing effect as well. It's just the variable speed of light. Oh, yeah, that's what interests you. There is no speed limit anymore. And if Einstein is gone, there's absolutely no more speed limit. That was completely just due to Einstein. So, and the fact that the speed of light was constant. So now it's variable, you can see. So we could probably put together a ship that could go into space and go much faster than the speed of light, perhaps even several times the speed of light, as long as the accelerations and the decelerations are gradual, so we are not crushed by the g-forces, gravitational forces. So, but we would need a very long sustained fuel. But with the new technology that is coming, something that is 20 light years away or 4 light years away, it won't take 5 years or 4 years, and or more like 50 years, because we never go anywhere near the speed of light. But it is in theory possible. So, but there are other ways to travel. I'm going to explain later. But this is one. If we are remaining completely stupid for the rest of our lives, there is at least a way to go faster than the speed of light, using just normal acceleration with normal propellant if we had an infinite amount of it. And we were just to accelerate and decelerate gradually. Now, let's see. Universal relativity. Now, this is the key to explain a lot of things. And basically, we are now into the paranormal and UFOs. Now, Einstein has got special relativity. And this is objects cover a distance by moving through space. But in universal relativity, which I came up with, which, it could have just been part of expansion theory, but I wanted to make it clear, because Einstein has got a general relativity, which is gravity, and there is special relativity, which is basically a theory of relative motion. Now, there is no distance in expansion theory, not in my version anyway. And objects do not cover a distance. When something moves toward you, it simply grows larger relative to you. And when something moves away, it shrinks. Now, this should be very familiar to you, because this is exactly what a virtual world is, or, on a computer simulation, a computer simulation. Are we living in a computer simulation? Probably. And that will explain it. Nobody thought of that. It's like, I can't believe this. It's like, if we're living in a computer simulation or, a virtual reality, then there is no distance. Everything is just like moving, getting larger as it comes closer and getting smaller as it moves away. Now, how do we explain this, though? Is because the reality is psychological in nature. It's coming from our brain. We are receiving clusters of electrons, which is light, into our eyes, and our brain is constructing this reality. So it's not very surprising that there is not really any distance. It's all an interpretation of our brain, because it's a psychological reality. And that's why consciousness is so important in this, when you look at the subtitle of my book. And if anybody's reading New Scientific, this magazine in the UK about science, it's always about consciousness and the universe is alive and everything. But here, finally, we've got a real theory. So everything is located more or less here in the same space. Reality is psychological in nature, like a virtual world constructed in the mind. It doesn't automatically means that we are living in a virtual reality or a computer simulation, but it is at least psychological, and this is how it should be working. Now, if there is no distance in the universe, you can just imagine that UFOs who know that and have known that for a long time, and there are older civilizations, then they can move instantly anywhere in the universe, pretty much instantly. It's just a question of shrinking yourself to wherever you want to go. But the way it works is its frequencies. when you look at something, it's like a TV, it's like it's all frequencies. So if you just every place and time in the universe, anywhere at a different time, any place has got its own frequency. And the frequency is the speed at which all the particles are orbiting each other. It's nothing to do with the frequency of light or the frequencies that you might know about. It's just the speed of the particles. And this is what the vibrational rate of matter is. And we've been told this by all the UFOs, the aliens, all the communications from the higher beings, like the fifth dimension. They've been telling us that for a long time. And I did not invent all these things. I just took these books and tried to make it work in physics and science. And this is how finally we understand, or we can understand what they've been telling us for so long. And God, it took us a really long time to figure it out. So everything is basically located here in the same space. Reality is psychological. To travel instantly to any location, you adjust your vibrational frequency to match that location. And this explains time travel. Any kind of, examples of time travel is just a question of frequencies. And if you read my books, you will see a lot of examples of this and proof that there are witnessed about all these things. You adjust your vibrational frequency to match the location. Every point in space and time has a unique resonant frequency. Match it exactly and you arrive there instantly. This is how UFOs cover interstellar distances and how time travel is possible. The past and the future are just dimensions with different frequencies. So basically, our world, our time and this is why they always told us that there is no time. We invented this concept. Uh, it's because the timeline is constantly fluctuating. The past can change the future can change the past. And it's always changing. And if you look at the prophecies, they tell you exactly what's going to happen next. But if the past changes, then the prophecy will change with it. So prophecies are a good indication of where we're heading if we don't change anything we're doing, but they are not cemented in place. We can still change the past or the future. Even with or without time machines, it's all psychological. You can probably think about it. Some people are probably very good at this. Some people can change their future or change their reality. This is what The Secret is all about. And what is it called? There's a theory about that. Anyway, you can change things just by thinking about it. I tried this and I'm very good at it. But be careful what you wish for because, that's how I ended up in Los Angeles. And once I got there, I stopped doing it and disaster. Came back to England. So, yeah, so you can change your life overnight, but not always for the better. Okay, this is how your first cover. Okay, now interdimensional time. Now that's quite interesting because I told you earlier that time was no longer relative, time is constant. But this is true within our own dimension. And it is true actually across all dimensions. But the difference is that it can be perceived differently. And it depends on how fast your particles are orbiting. If you're orbiting extremely fast, you can actually do a lot of tasks in the same amount of time that someone moving more slowly can actually achieve. So it's the same amount of time. The planets always orbit at the same rate for everybody in all the interdimensional worlds, but time is perceived differently. So if your particles are moving much faster, then you will actually move in fast forward. And if they're moving much slower, like a tortoise at 15 Hertz, then they will look to us like they are moving in slow motion. So this is and then flies 250 Hertz. They move 4 times faster than us. They've got plenty of time to see us coming. That shows you what a different dimension is. This is what dimensions are about. It's about size of the particles, size of the objects, and it's nothing like the concepts of dimensions that mathematical dimensions like tesseract and things like that, or other complicated dimensions like in superstrings. It's really just that. It's the size of the particle depending on their speed and frequency. So time is constant everywhere, but it takes it takes the same in all dimension, but it's perceived differently depending on vibrational rate. The faster your particles orbit, the more you can accomplish in the same amount of time. And I give you the example of the tortoises moving in slow motion. Humans are normal perception of time, and the flies 4 times faster. Just beyond these frequencies, creatures disappear from view entirely, like flying rods. They are probably just insects. And that threshold is the boundary between dimensional worlds. UFOs crossing that threshold vanish instantly. So this is how they can just disappear and then, just reappear as soon as it's moving too fast. And then it's much more. Let's move to the next slide, I think. Yeah, I can actually, they are less dense in the interdimensional density sense. So they can actually, then they disappear from our view and we cannot interact with it, but they're still there. They're just like gases. It's like it's less dense, that's all. So let's move to part two, UFOs, anti-gravity, and interdimensional worlds. Now that the physics is in place, let's answer the questions you came here for. Now, anti-gravity. Wouldn't you want to know how this works? No, no, not interested. Okay, our UAPs defy gravity, interdimensional buoyancy. It's about buoyancy. If you've got a balloon in underwater, it will actually go up to the surface. If you got an helium balloon, which helium is gas which is much less dense than the gas of our atmosphere or the air, it will actually fly up in the sky. It's the same thing for UFOs. So, it's less dense than air. They become less dense than air because when the particles are orbiting faster, they are also becoming more spaced out. And also they are getting larger particles. And then so they are less dense than air. So, and when the Earth is expanding in expansion theory, it pushes the air up. So they stay exactly where they are because they are moved with the air. It's like a fly in the car. If you've got the windows shut, the fly will actually can fly in the car because the bubble of air within the car moves with the car. And and then how they actually can move around, it's propulsion, vary density on each edge of the bubble to move directionally. So they can change the vibrational rate on one side, or the density of the one side, and then you can move that way. Or they can suddenly change the whole density of the whole ship, and then they will be propelled completely outside of the source of the Earth's atmosphere in no time. Because when you change your density, you will go exactly where the same density is. And there is always different kind of gradations of density. The atmosphere gets less dense as it goes up, and in the solar system, as you move away, also the density changes. The gas giants, there's less. So there's always a way to change your own by changing your frequency of vibration rate of matter, which is your interdimensional density. You can actually always move immediately where you want to go just by changing, corresponding. That's what I meant earlier when I said the corresponding frequency of that place and time. It's basically the perfect density, the size of everything that matches that place and time. And you will go there immediately like a balloon on the water that goes up through buoyancy. Right. So accelerate neutrino. Now, how can you do this? That's very interesting. This is important distinction. We're not talking about normal density changes, which is solid, liquid to gas, usually through heat or pressure, where molecular structures break apart. This is interdimensional density of matter. It keeps all molecular structures intact. It's the same object, solid, liquid, or gas, just smaller, larger particles orbiting slower or faster, less or more spaced out, appears gaseous or invisible to us, while being completely solid and physical to the beings vibrating at that frequency. So, when you change the normal solid, liquid, or gas, you change it's the electrons. If you add electrons, it's like heat, and then they will switch from, ice to water. And pressure. If you put pressure, then it will actually move faster, and then it can also change. But when it comes to interdimensional density, it is the electrons that needs to change. Sorry, the neutrinos within the electrons that needs to go faster or slower. And you do that by adding neutrinos in the electrons or getting some out. So they get more excited or less excited, and so the orbits will enlarge or shrink. And if the electrons within the atoms themselves and within the molecules get bigger, then this is when the interdimensional density of matter changes. So it's accelerate the neutrinos within Kraft's atoms. Orbital rings enlarge, atoms grow, more spaced out, matter becomes less dense than atmosphere. Buoyancy pushes the craft upward automatically. At near density, there is zero g forces. There's an instant acceleration. So if there is no gravitational force that will actually crush you, you can suddenly go very fast. You can stop at any angle, and you can go in every direction at extraordinary speed without no problem. Propulsion, vary density on each edge of the bubble to move directionally, or they could perhaps also use some of them, and maybe they all don't all use the same thing. Electromagnetic propulsion. Now, as I told you before, electromagnetism are just you can eject a lot of electrons, clouds of electrons, and then they are expanding, so they stay connected, so you can push yourself against other objects of the earth, or you can also create an attraction by having all these clouds getting together, so you can manipulate these electromagnetic fields and move that way. Now that's interesting because they've got a different electromagnetic spectrum than us, because their particles are orbiting faster, and they are also larger and more spaced out. So they've got exactly the same electromagnetic spectrum as us, infrared, which is heat, and then, visible light and ultraviolet, but everything is a bit higher. So what I was going to say about this is that their electromagnetic fields are probably much more deadly to us than our normal ones. So whenever there are examples of UFO encounters where people have been burned, or it looks like radiation or whatever, it's probably just higher dimensional magnetic fields. Now, this also works for the megaliths, the Stonehenge pyramids, Coral Castle in Florida. It's the way they probably, created the Antigravity to move the rocks up. Also, anything that goes into a higher dimension becomes malleable from our point of view, like metals or rocks. You can make them perfect, and that's why they fit them perfectly into the pyramids, or, this guy in Florida could do it himself. So, and he wrote in a book, and you read the book, and you still have no clue what it is that he's done, as extraordinary as it sounds. So he probably didn't tell us, and he's dead. But that's probably how it works. Um, Rocks raised to higher density frequency, shape while malleable and solidified back. Right, let's move on. Interdimensional worlds, a mechanical explanation. That's probably going to be quick. Dimensions are not parallel universes through magic portals. They are the same space, matter vibrating at different frequencies, and they can all share the same space. So, the one who wrote the Mothman Prophecy, I can't remember his name now, but he had super spectrums, and he had um, what is I'm trying to say? Right, no, it might come back. Okay, lower dimensions. Frequency, slower orbiting particles. The beings that you are likely to see there are shadow beings, demons, heavy entities, Bigfoot, Mothman. And there is our dimension, normal particle frequency, 50, 60 Hertz, the human range. Beings are humans, animals, plants, everything we can see. Higher dimensions, frequency, fast orbiting particles. And then it's the UFOs, the grays, light beings, angels, spirits, ghosts. Frequency, vibrational rate. How fast neutrinos orbit within electrons, which sets electron size and speed within atoms, which set atoms, molecule size and spacing. I think I've just said that before. We cannot see other dimensions because they vibrate outside our sensory range. And they can all live together like gases intermixing. I remember now what I was going to say. It's that instead of using extraterrestrials, the author, I can't remember now, of the Mothman Prophecy was saying ultra-terrestrials. And this is what I've used on the cover of my book, because I think it's probably a civilization living exactly where we are. They must have cities, and they've been here for a long time, much before us. And they have cities probably everywhere. And there are some examples of people who have seen cities like that. Sometimes they see them in the sky. Sometimes, like in El Cerro del Pueblo, They can see them floating up. They've got obviously structures that we can't see, and so they are probably extraterrestrials who come from outside the solar system or other planets, but there are also ultra-terrestrials, probably civilizations has been living here for a long time. And the how do you call the black guys? Not the black guys, the men in black. That's
But
it. Yeah. So those are probably coming from these ultra-terrestrials or cities, and that's why they are acting a bit weird. They're probably not very familiar with how we do things, and we can immediately spot that something is wrong. But and then you know, the Mothman and the Bigfoot, that's why we don't see them very often. That's why they kind of disappear. It's because they're not very from our own dimension. But sometimes, without realizing it, the dimensions can actually intermix depending on temperature, electromagnetic field, geomagnetic fields, and then suddenly you will see them. One or the other will find themselves in the other dimension for a while. Some people who have found themselves in the past 50 years in the past is the same process. So it's now we have, the whole physics can explain all this, which is quite interesting. Now, why do only some people see UFOs or ghosts? Well, the fact that I said earlier that it was more psychological reality, and it all depends on frequencies is a good reason. This has always been the most awkward questions for skeptics. An adult won't see the ghost, but a child will. Why? And then, of course, they don't believe the kid. This has always been the most awkward. Okay, expansion theory answers it there. Personal vibration rate. Each person's particles orbit at a slightly different frequency. Psychic mediums, sensitives, and certain individuals naturally vibrate closer to the boundary of adjacent dimensions, making them more likely to perceive what others cannot, and probably possible futures, but it's always changing, so that's how they could be wrong sometimes. They're trying to see the most likely futures, like Nostradamus was doing in the books of Dolores Cannon. If you have not read that, you should. Temporary frequency shift, extreme emotion, meditation, near-death experiences, psychedelic states, sleep deprivation, or electromagnetic interference can temporarily shift a person's vibrational rate, bringing other dimensions briefly into range. Environmental convergence zone, as I explained before. In certain locations, the frequencies of two dimensions partially overlap due to specific electromagnetic conditions, geomagnetic anomalies, probably that's a very big one, or temperatures and pressure gradients. This explains haunted areas and UAP hotspots. The infrared ultraviolet clue. Now, that's an interesting one. You might be aware of this. It was an obvious link to do. I'm not sure if others have made it. Lower dimension beings, shadow beings, demons, the Bigfoot, the Mothman, are often described with red glowing eyes. Maybe not the shadow beings, they're totally black. They emit infrared, so they are like bats. But it's just because they are living, for them, the visible light in the electromagnetic spectrum is probably more the infrared. It's a bit kind of not exactly the same. So that's why they've got red glowing eyes. And the higher dimension beings, the grays, the light beings, they have these kind of big lenses, large compound eyes, and they are probably more seeing the ultraviolet spectrum of light, which, is all outside our visible light. That's why we can't see that. And they both lay just outside our visible spectrum. That's exactly it. And I think I remember reading something about a guy who said that he was just putting an ultraviolet filter on his camera, and suddenly he saw lots of UFOs up there. I think it's one of these parks in the United States, and so even a filter will do. It's like I was looking into these FLIR cameras that can see gases because it's kind of similar to interdimensional, matter, in a way, because it's less dense, but it is kind of different. But we can see better with infrared cameras, so it does work. So these are all things to look into. Infrared and ultraviolet, and depending on what you want to see, you might want to try different things. And God knows what we would see if we were to use gamma rays. This is weird creatures. There. All UAPs travel, disappear, and cross. Can't see what it is written there. Cross dimensions, right? Instant acceleration, right angles, turns. Standard physics, it's impossible. Violates inertia, would kill any occupant. expansion theory. At near air density, the craft has virtually, I can't read, can I move this? Yeah.
I can read.
Craft has virtually no mass inertia, no g-force is generated, and 90% turns at speed is unremarkable. Okay, disappearing and appearing from nothing. Standard physics, no explanation offered, usually dismissed. Expansion theory, the craft shifts in its vibrational frequency above or below our visible range. It doesn't leave, it phases out of our dimension, it's still physically present. Solid light beams that levitate people. That's an interesting one. I would love to go through walls. Standard physics, impossible. Light has no structural strength. Expansion theory, a beam of higher frequency electron clusters can shift matter's vibrational rate. So as I said, their light has got a different electromagnetic spectrum. It, from our point of view, becomes solid light, and it changes our own vibrational rate, and then we can get trapped into their light, and then we can go through walls, ceilings, windows, anything. Make it temporarily less dense than air, buoyant, and permeable to solid barriers. Instant interstellar intergalactic travel. Stellar physics impossible without FTL, faster than light, or wormholes, both implausible. Expansion theory. In universal relativity, there is no distance. Objects expand or contract relative to observers. Adjusting frequency equal moving. Every location has a unique resonance. And every UAP behavior as a mechanical, I don't know what you feel about UAP. For me, they're still UFOs, but I think they're trying to move away from the ridicule that it invites. But I just can't get used to UAP. But air UAP. Maybe some of you will be happy. Every UAP behavior has a mechanical explanation in expansion theory. Relative motion, UAPs appear to move in impossible right-angled zigzags from our perspective. Now, if you have looked at flies flying, sometimes you will see that they fly exactly like that, right angles and zigzags. And this is how we perceive it, but it doesn't mean this is how they move. From their dimension, they may be moving quite normally. So it's from it all depends on perception from the point of view of the different dimensions. So all the extraordinary feat that we see these UFO do, it may not be what is really happening. So when you go extraordinary speed, are they really? I don't know. I can't be sure. Maybe you have a lot of these answers. Despite all of this, I have to tell you that I haven't studied the subject that much. For me, it's all just my own theory, trying to explain what I've read in the books of Doris Cannon and that other guy that wrote the Mothman Prophecy. I had a few authors, and I've read everything from them. And then Jane Roberts set, and then trying to put the science together. So you probably have a lot more answers. And that's the same thing about my theories of physics, is that a lot of people, I can read some articles sometimes, and I'm just thinking, oh, I know the answer to this, or that will solve their problem. And so, and I don't know any of these things, but I can see that you might find suddenly answers to things that you're working on, or that you have experience, or that you have been studying or researching. Now, ghosts, cold spots, and the physics of apparitions. That sounds very interesting, isn't it? Uh, Now, what standard physics dismisses as hallucinations, expansion theory explains as full-density bioplasma. Now, all these topics is precisely why I would never be recognized with my theories of physics, because obviously they will say that I'm a total lunatic and, totally crazy. But, we are after the truth, aren't we? And we need to explain this world. And when you've got thousands and thousands of witnesses telling you something and you just dismiss it because you can't explain it, something is wrong with you. And if the scientists in this world had actually paid a little bit of attention to any of what these witnesses were saying, we would have solved this by now, like that. And now, look, we're 2026 and we still don't know this. I've just written all that, and it's probably not going to go anywhere. All the platforms where I published it, zero views, and probably shadow ban, I don't know. And, I'm not a theoretical physicist myself. I'm not a scientist. It's all self-learned. My background is in French literature and philosophy. But anyway, with AI these days, we're all kind of scientists. Now, what standard physics dismisses are... Okay, I read that. What is a ghost? A consciousness in a body vibrating at a different frequency. higher spirits, light beings, or lower shadow beings, demons, the Bigfoot, the Mothman. Lower dimension beings often show red lying eyes, these infrared. Shadow beings appear nearly 2D from our perspective. I don't know if you've seen, you must have seen videos of these. It's been in every program. It's very amazing. It's like a shadow on the wall that actually cuts where the floor and the wall goes. Dark silhouettes on wall and floors. Higher beings have large compound eyes. Okay, yeah. So that's quite interesting. And that shows exactly what the lower dimension would be. And in a way, works like it's 2D, 3D, three-dimensional, four-dimensional. But as I said, it was not the case. The dimension refers to size. But in the case of these, there's maybe something to seeing in 2Ds or 3Ds or 4Ds after all, because these shadow beings being that definitely are 2Ds. But maybe it's just an effect of light or optical illusion. Why do cold spots appear? Now that's a very interesting one. And if anyone has actually ever checked how a refrigerator works, a fridge, you would understand what's happening when a ghost appears and it suddenly becomes cold. Um, to become visible, an entity must lower its frequency to interact with 3D matter. This ionizes surrounding gases in an endothermic reaction, rapidly absorbing heat from the room. The entity acts as a temporary refrigerator. So it's for them to it saps all the particles in the air to basically materialize. So the heat is made of clusters of electrons and large ones, the biggest one. So they take that away. So what's left, the cold, because it's all gone. So, and this is exactly what the fridge do. They take a gas, the ionized gas, and then it produces a lot of heat, but it also produces cold in the fridge. Why do they pass through walls? Their matter vibrates too fast for solid 3D matter to interact with. The atoms of a wall pass through the vast spaces between the entity's high-frequency particles, just like different gases pass through each other. Do we have other bodies? Well, I think this is pretty clear for anyone who's spiritual, anyone who's religious. Um, uh, we likely have a plasma, Robert Temple, a plasma or etheric body in a higher dimension that contains our consciousness. So consciousness is probably not in our brain, or I think it is in our brain, but it is also in the etheric or plasma body that must be superimposed over us, which explains auras. And plasma are known to sustain biological structures and processes. I think this is what Robert Temple was talking about. And I had written lots about this before as well, and there was a lot of things about that. And when we die, we continue with that body in a higher frequency dimension. The body is gone, the consciousness is not. So I think that consciousness probably is in both bodies, and that's how. Because I think that if you take a copy of the brain itself and you put it in a computer, you will pretty much get the same, and you would even get a consciousness, I think. But it's double. You got a double, and so if the physical body dies, it continues as before with the copy, which is the etheric body or the plasma body. Plasma is actually the fourth state of matter. There is after gases, there is no solid, liquid, gases, and plasma, and it's basically ionized gas, which means it's missing a few particles. Unlike gases, it's got less particles, less electrons. Now, why do cameras see what eyes miss? Camera sensors respond to a broader electromagnetic range than human eyes. It's very interesting. I don't know if you ever asked the question. Infrared cameras detect lower dimension entities. UV filters detect higher dimension entities. So it's like putting glasses. Why do cyclical on things replay? Now, that's interesting. I'm not sure how many times any of you might have come across on things that is cyclical. They seem to have been more frequent in the past. I don't know. But matter and magnetic fields can store electromagnetic recordings. Even rocks, you can store data. You can record things. Magnetic tape is not a magic technology. It's precisely that. So it's like under specific conditions, pressure, temperature, electromagnetic fields, these recordings replay. So no consciousness is involved. It is a physical playback. There's more I could say here about, if particles are a bit faster, then these beings must be talking much faster than us. And so the technology that we would have to develop not only would need to orbit faster, but also it would have to move faster, or record faster, or adjust speeds of things, So it's quite amazing that when they do communicate, and it's on our level that we can understand without slowing it down or speeding it up. And they are practically here. The two realities have met. So. Are you still there? Your screen sharing? Yeah, it's still working. Right. Let's see. What's the next? Part three, implications and what comes next. There's not much left, I think. What expansion theory resolves? Dark matter. Oh, it's an hour. Okay. Dark matter. Galaxy rotation explained by swarm gravity of nested orbital rings. Visible mass, always there. Dark energy. Accelerating universe is an illusion. Light accelerates towards us. Galaxies are relatively static. Big Bang singularity. No beginning explosion required. Fractal hierarchical eternal universe. Been there forever. Probably. Black holes, singularities, massive dead stars, no infinite density, no information paradox, no more wormholes, I'm afraid, if you were counting on that to go to the other side of the universe. But there are better ways, I think, than trying to go through a wormhole. I'm not sure you would survive it. Time dilation, GPS, mechanical resonance effects on atomic clocks, no curved spacetime needed, UFO propulsion, let me see. Interdimensional buoyancy via frequency density manipulation, wave particle duality, swarms of electrons clusters behaving like fluid dynamics. No, right. The wave particles. Sometimes light acts like a wave and sometimes like a particle, and they're going so crazy about this. It's always particles. There's no wave. But sometimes particles can move in waves. It's like molecules of water. They are still particles, but they move in waves. So that's probably what the problem comes from. But it's not just that. There are swarms of electron clusters behaving like fluid dynamics. So they think there was only a few electrons, but if there are billions and they are moving like an ocean, its fluid dynamics is totally different. So a lot of the quantum mechanics weirdness disappears as soon as you actually understand that we are dealing with billions of electrons instead of few. And quantum entanglement is connected swarms are never truly separated. They have a knockdown effect through electron bridges. Now, if you see a light from a galaxy that is very far away, then there is a bridge of electrons or clusters of electrons from that galaxy to us. So there is kind of quantum entanglement here, if you want. So that's exactly that. So, there's a bridge of particles connecting to. So when something changes here, it can change. But quantum entanglement is not even that. If you look at the real definition of it, you would not be very impressed. There's nothing magical about it, even without the new interpretation from expansion theory. It's nothing what they're saying. It's nothing like what they're saying. But it will be too much to get into that. Gravity and electromagnetic unification. Coulomb's law equals Newton's gravity applied to swarms, same force, different variables. And this is achieved. Now, this sounds like nothing to you perhaps, but this could probably change everything. That's just that alone. But, the fractal universe also. So, and that's quite interesting because it's on the last technology that could become possible. Right, two more slides. Technology that could become possible. If this, right. If expansion theory is correct, these are engineering challenges, not science fiction. Anti-gravity propulsion, manipulate vibrational frequency of a craft's atoms via electromagnetic field, buoyancy exceeds atmospheric density, silent, fuel-free flight, no rocket needed. Faster than light travel, without Einstein's speed limit. Faster than light travel is not forbidden, just technically challenging. Acceleration and deceleration must be gradual to avoid crushing g-forces. Adjust frequency to shift location via universal resonance. Dimensional phase shifting. Shift vibrational rate above, below visible range. Object becomes invisible or permeable. Also, our pyramids, tonnage ziggurats in Coral Castle were likely built. Rocks raised to air density frequency, easily lifted and shaped, then solidified back into our dimension. free energy from light. Now, I've worked with the AI to try to see lots of different ways by which we could produce light, electricity, and I can tell you. But as soon as you start talking about that, people start dying, suppress inventions and disappearing inventors. So maybe I shouldn't say anymore. But light is matter with mass. Head-on collision of two light beams in a vacuum chamber physically shatters electron clusters, releasing electrons as direct current. Of course, these big corporations, they need to make their money. If we could all produce our own electricity in our garden, I'm surprised they allow solar panels. They know how inefficient it is. Now, interdimensional communication, every location and time has a unique electromagnetic resonance signature, technology to tune to those signatures, equal communication across dimensions and time. Now, if you've got all these theories, as I just explained them, maybe we'll be able to invent a radio that could communicate with other dimensions and dead people, and in a way, maybe even make dead people appears. So, if you're into the Bible and religion, then that alone is the raising the dead, raising the dead that they were talking about. So, when you've got such a massive shift in thinking in science, of course, if this is all correct, but I've got many proofs now, so there's hope. So it changes a lot of things. And time, location, navigation, adjust your own vibrational frequency to match any location in history. Universal relativity, distance is an illusion. Frequency is location. Right. And that's the last slide, I think. A theory of everything in its infancy. Well, it's not in its infancy. I think, it's been going on at least since, well, for me, since 1994, maybe since I was 10 years old, I was already thinking about Einstein. But all my articles were, like as I said, December, November 2025, and my book New Age Physics was published in 2022. These articles and three other chapters that I've written in New Age Physics 2 are going to be the second book coming soon. And the three chapters are free. You can download them on any of the pages of the links there. This framework is new, published 2025 November, not peer reviewed yet. Don't count on it. It's never going to be peer reviewed. And then what it has done: eliminated dark matter and dark energy, explain GPS discrepancies mechanically, match fractal ratios and 95, 97%, explain all UAP's behaviors, unified gravity and electromagnetism numerically. If even one of these results holds under scrutiny, it changes everything. And here you've got links to all my articles, as either as a PDF or docs, and Medium, LinkedIn, Substack, Patreon links. My articles are on all of these. And my YouTube channels where I'm going to put this interview on because I think it was a good one. And I've said a lot because I had a presentation for one. So I was not like staring in the skies thinking, oh, when I'm going blank. And my previous interviews are there. My last one, I was like that. It was 8 in the morning. I was still sleeping. But the two before that, but they were all before my articles and everything. So it's not as this presentation. This is really like totally new. It was not developed to that point. That's it. Now I'm going to stop sharing the presentation.
Fantastic. I think a lot of this is like, wow, it's kind of a little over our heads. But it's really fascinating the multiple areas you've touched on. So I know we've got questions. I don't know if Bambi wants to unmute and ask her question or she wants me to ask it directly. She wrote it in the chat. Bambi, do you want to unmute yourself or I get there?
No, go ahead, ask.
Okay. So she said, is remote viewing located in targeted frequency?
Remote viewing.
Remote viewing, yes. So someone who's psychic and they can see like another target in time or space, and they can, they can be given a target, like a GPS target, and
And what was the question exactly?
Is remote viewing locating a targeted frequency?
So if reality is psychological in nature and it works into frequencies, I think that would explain a lot of things. Um, So yeah, uh, you know, I had some experiences of that, and I did try it. It works very well. And I put some, photos in an envelope, and then I'm saying that I'm going to look at it in 24 hours and trying to visualize what it is. And I don't exactly get it correct, but it's there's a lot of things, even telepathy. If you go into a place where there's no sound or anything with your friends, telepathy works. If you just try, if and anybody can do it. And being a psychic, a lot of people are saying also that anybody could do it. So if the reality is all psychological and it's all frequencies, that will explain a lot of things. And I think that through concentrations and through trying, there's a lot of things that probably we could do without, being psychic or having any kind of special abilities. So that it's all based on the and frequencies that the whole reality might be. And if you look at it, Earths and frequencies, it's everywhere. It's all around. It's our TVs, our displays, our monitors, our computers, our CPUs, the memory of the computers. It's all working on that principle. It just doesn't look like it when you look at nature and trees but if you've seen the Matrix movie, so yeah, remote viewing, very, very interesting. But it's like everything else. After a while, you probably kind of get bored. It's like being able to change your future. Yes, you could, easily, but then what's the point? Do I want to be prime minister or, president or, do I want to live in a massive mansion that have billions of pounds? You reassess your priorities and your values, and it changed your views about the universe or the reality, like the Matrix movie did for anyone who watched them earlier on. We saw everything very differently. I'm not sure to which point or to which extent it's true, but a lot of people do, feel that this is probably close to the truth. So yeah, remote viewing, very interesting.
Well, we have another question from Susan. I'll invite her to unmute herself and ask if she'd like.
I actually have two things to address Bambi's question. And I've mentioned this before, that in like early 1990, I learned how to interdimensional travel. So I've known for a long time this is all about shifting your vibration. Now, when we interdimensional traveled, though, we didn't lose visibility. We could still see. Our bodies were still here. Our consciousness is what shifted. That's the vibration that traveled. It's different from remote viewing. Who's that birdie in Albuquerque, New Mexico? Is this big time remote viewer? I've gone to a lot of her talks. She's been teaching it. She now calls it her method of remote viewing, transdimensional mapping. And she doesn't change her vibration. Her consciousness doesn't go somewhere. She views it from a distance. And she said people who, like me, who meditate in interdimensional travel are very difficult to teach how to remote view. I don't think.
I've seen something, I've experienced, it's like a camera that can move extremely fast and will actually focus immediately on what you want to see or control. It's like I had a dream once and it was a bad one, and I had a feeling that someone was like manipulating it. And I was aware of it in the dream. I stopped in the dream and I said, "No, who is doing this? I want to see you. Show yourself." And I immediately kind of poof. I was in front of that woman and I was looking at her. She was kind of an Indian or Pakistani woman, probably not that, and she was just there looking at me and she was surprised. And it was like remote viewing. It's like, it's like suddenly it's like a camera that will move and go straight, exactly focus exactly where you want immediately. I don't know if it's exactly that. All of you probably have more experience than me or knowledge than me. But I hope that, this gives you a base. Sorry, Suzanne, if you want to continue.
Oh, no, that's fine. I don't really there's a subtle difference, and I'm not sure exactly what that difference is. So, I mean, if I find out, pass the information on, but I don't think I will find out anytime soon. Anyway, the second part, my question is, some physicist, was it a physicist or anyway, he was talking about dimensions, and he said there are beings like when I interdimensional travel, my consciousness is either there or here. It can't be in many places at the same time. And he said that there are beings whose consciousness can be in multiple places at the same time. So either I'm not getting what time is, but that to me like blows my mind that your consciousness can be in multiple places simultaneously. So can you address, like, am I missing something? Like, is that something, like, should I be okay with that? Oh yeah, that's fine. But I don't grasp that.
Did you say that you actually went to other dimensional worlds?
Oh,
You traveled there?
absolutely. Yes, I know how to do it. Yes.
Well, can you tell us what it looks like?
Well, it depends where you go. Okay, so a story that I like to tell because people can grasp it is, so when I was taught, first of all, we were gathered, and I didn't know it at the time. All I know is these people in California were teaching it. They called it Awakening Your Light Body. And I just knew I had to be there. I called them. I said, I'm not on your mailing list. I really don't know who you are. I just know I have to be there. Well, when I got there many months later, when they were holding it, they said they had put out an energy call and they knew I was supposed to be there because I had heard it. Like I could feel it. That's how when I use the word hear, I didn't hear, but I could feel it. So anyway, there were 90 of us, and they taught us how we traveled together. And then how we knew we were doing it is nobody told you what your experience was going to be. So the energies would shift and the vibrations would shift and we would go somewhere. And when we came back, the proctor or the person guiding us, his name was Dwayne Packer. He was a geophysicist. He had us talk about what our experiences were, and our experiences were all similar. That's how we knew it was real, because nobody was telling us what our experience was supposed to be. So anyway, so this one example is we go to this place, and this specific place, we needed permission from the beings that live there to go there ahead of time. Anyway, so we go, and they didn't have bodies. They exist in a gaseous form. And when they communicated with us, again, each of us had our own experience. This is so after we come back, we all share, and we all had this experience, similar experience. We existed, our consciousness existed in a gaseous state there. And there wasn't talking, there wasn't telepathy. Our consciousness with their gaseous form, if you want to call it their consciousness, kind of just blended together. And there was like an understanding or a sharing of knowingness. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Well, anyway, that was the experience. So does that answer your question?
Yeah. So you see here, because
and people would think I'm crazy. I mean, I wouldn't tell just anybody about this.
A higher dimension should look exactly like what we see here. You know, like when these realities are mixing together, they share the same space. Like when you see a Bigfoot or when you see a UFOs. So it should look the same. But the problem is if it's a bit too high or different than ours, as I said earlier, interdimensional density of matter will look like gases or light beams.
And there were lots of colors in the gas.
Yeah. And for example, for beings from the 17th centuries, if they were looking at us now, they would see beings of light. There are many examples of that in Dolores Cannon's books. So if you saw them as gaseous form, you were probably still kind of you were seeing them from a
We
higher
couldn't.
dimension
We
than you
couldn't.
were. And other
Okay.
people might have seen them much better and like real people if they have been able to reach that same level of vibrational rate of matter. So there is no contradiction from my theories from what you're saying. It's all very very interesting. Some people have traveled, they say, into other dimensional worlds, and they see things very differently, like more geometric mathematical things. But I can't explain that. But there was something interesting or important that
I
I wanted
mostly
to
see
say.
light when I travel.
Light.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know if it is light. If that's my perception, is
Mm.
it's light. Sometimes color, sometimes not.
Oh yes, that's what I was going to say. I was going to say that things are much less dense, less concrete, and the secret or the law of attraction. That's what I was looking at earlier on. I was looking at the law of attraction works extremely well. It's more like a dream world. You can whatever you want, you can just make it happen very easily with your mind. It's very difficult in the physical world, and that's why they're telling us all that we can. With all the powers that we're supposed to have and how easy it should be, but it's not easy because you can't. It's very difficult to change the whole physical world, and that will have impact on other people as well. But so when you change reality, it's probably more like a personal reality. It's a frequency that changes. But it's I would have thought perhaps also it will be more like a dream, less concrete and bubble realities, if you wish. And
But it
you,
definitely, when I was learning then, and I've been using other methods now to travel. Um, the takeoff point, it has nothing to do with your brain. It happens from the center of your chest. There's like a portal, um, uh, and there's an explosion of energy that happens, and then you're like thrown into. I think you said like I don't know, just things move really, really fast. And you can see all these places where you can stop and say hi, or, stop and stay there and vibrate there. I mean, you could it's like amazing how many different places you could go, but it has nothing to do with when I do it, the method that I use has nothing to do with my brain.
you mean it's not a psychological reality, but
I
in the
don't use my
psychological,
brain. You can feel it happen, but there's an explosion that happens of
yeah.
energy in the
But
center of your chest, and you just like take off. I couldn't stay here even if I wanted to. I'd have to come back. Well, maybe you don't know. I don't know. It's weird. It is weird, but
yeah, of course, it's difficult to
huh?
conceptualize if we haven't experienced it. It's difficult to conceptualize if we have not experienced it. But
And then maybe the words aren't a good way to capture it. But I've
even though
taught
it's a
people how to do it.
yeah, despite the fact that it's a psychological reality, we still have a body. We still have, it has been created. So, there is a body. There are, these chakras and energy levels and things. So it would not look like a cerebral or just a psychological experience. It seems very real, and ultimately, it may be very real too. I mean, these are all theories, but and they do explain a lot. But at the end of the day, they could always be superseded. But I envy you, to have these kind of experiences.
Oh, well, it's not really that hard. Did
So
you comment about consciousness beings that have consciousness and can be in multiple places at the same time? Did you comment on that and I missed it?
Um, no, I
Because
haven't.
that blows my mind. To me, my consciousness is either someplace or it's here, or it's only ever one place at a time. It can't be in multiple places at the same time. Not my
No, yeah.
consciousness. It can't be. I mean, I don't have that ability.
It depends on focus, and as soon as you can only focus on one thing at one time, I would have thought. But, we are limited humans, I mean, there may be other beings that can suddenly, see in many places at
How?
once or
But
be
how? That
unaware.
doesn't to me fall into your description of how it works. If their consciousness is in multiple places at the same time, I don't see how your theories even can explain that.
I don't know. I never gave it any
Okay,
thought.
all right. Well,
But
we'll see.
if you could actually, make it much clearer and what are the problem that I would need to solve, I could probably see that my theory might help or somehow, or
All right.
I
Well,
might find a way to explain
I'll
it.
have to reflect on it, and I'll have to read some of your articles.
Yes, and
Okay.
my email
Thank you.
address, is at the end of my presentation. If you want to clearly explain to me what is the issue,
I'd have to
I'll give it
think
some
about
thought
it. A better
and
way
give
to
you some
describe it.
and
Okay.
then give you an idea of what I
Okay.
think or what's possible.
Okay.
And
Thank
if
you.
you email me, Susan, I can give you Roland's email address as well if you want. It's easy
Okay.
to. So Amy has a question. Go ahead and unmute Amy.
I just have a comment reflecting on Susan's sharing. Thank you, Susan. Um, and that is, Roland spoke of chakras, and the heart is a portal. So naturally, you can't think about leaving and going somewhere. You need to drop into your heart where you came from and where we're going when we're not in body anymore. And that's the portal that changes the dimension out of the psychological. If we think we want to travel, we're not going to. That's our heads. We have to drop into our hearts.
I like that comment. Well, there actually is a question in the chat from someone who's on their iPhone that says, "How do we
Oh,
change our frequencies?"
yeah. Well, you meditate, you visualize, you talk to nature. The thing about cameras too is with my cell phone, when I often, especially up in Vermont, when I took photos of just beautiful fields, I would send them to Jennifer, and there'd be red orbs and orange orbs all over the fields that I never saw with my eyes or even with my phone when I was taking the photo, but you saw them, Jen.
Yes. Yes.
So,
Very
and
interesting.
one other observation is you talk about time and the relativity of time. I've had a few experiences where I'm I'm driving and I know I didn't get off one highway, but suddenly I'm on a neighborhood road again, and I'm not sure what happened, but I know I didn't get off the blue route, yet I'm not on it anymore, and I didn't pass out or I wasn't drinking or in an altered state, and it's really interesting. It's not frightening, but I'm just trying to figure it out, and I don't think it's anything in science that could explain that. I had something like that I also shared with Jennifer, where I was backing out of my garage, and I kept seeing a black car in the rearview mirror, so I kept stopping. And then I try to back out again and look in the rearview mirror, and there's a black car. And I would turn around, and there was no black car.
I
On
was,
the
and that was
final,
a different
so
occasion.
so when I left and finally went up this long hill of my driveway, a black car turned into my driveway a few minutes later. But I saw it at the bottom of my driveway in my rearview mirror, and it wasn't there.
Well, first of all, interdimensional beings are master manipulators. They can make us see whatever we want. If you read the books of the Dolores Cannon, I think that's pretty clear.
Yes.
So, and usually you would only remember something unusual, like seeing a bird or something, or, as you say, a black car. But what you're missing is another whole experience that you can't remember. One thing that happens when you move between interdimensions or different dimensional worlds, it's like you forget. And I think it's just a natural occurrence. They don't make us forget. It's like a dream. If you don't set out immediately to write it down when you wake
Right.
up,
It
it
dissolves.
will be gone. And so if you were taken, on a ship, first of all, the whole world would stop. It would, because the time difference. I mean, if your particles are orbiting faster, then, the Earth will appear like frozen in place. You'll be taken, and then they will put you back somewhere else or closer to where you were from. You would see a time discrepancy or a time problem, and then when they put you back into our dimension, then time as the time rates were different. I mean, or the perception of time was different then. So that's how people can arrive at the destination much faster than they thought.
Yeah, I
So
wonder about that. That's like what happened with Travis. He didn't realize he was gone for so many days. He thought it was like a few minutes, or time didn't exist there, right?
Yeah, Amy is referring to a documentary film I made about the very famous Travis Walton. I don't know if Roland knows about him or not.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, I've seen the documentary, but it,
Yeah.
it was a while ago. Yeah,
Yes,
I need
2015.
I need to watch it again because,
70s.
but it was a fascinating documentary. I really loved it, and that certainly inspired me a great deal. I need to watch it again.
Thank you.
Great, great.
Uh,
Right.
okay.
Well,
You're welcome.
I don't know if we have any other questions. We may not, and I might just stop recording
I
since
have a question.
oh, okay, go ahead.
It's Millie.
Hi, Millie.
Hi, I'm iPhone.
Yes, okay. Hi, Millie. Good.
I wanted to know if Avi Loeb read your book or if you have spoken to him about your
RV
theory.
RV Loeb.
Do you know
I'm
who
s-
Avi Loeb is? Avi Loeb is
Physicist.
the head of Harvard Astronomy Department, and he's been very outspoken on the fact that we're most likely not alone in the universe.
Is he the one talking about the kind of space vessel in space at the moment,
Yeah.
Three
or
Eye
look like an
Atlas.
asteroid?
Yes, yes, he is.
Yes, I think I'm aware of him. I think I may have contacted him, but these people never answer me back. I don't know why. I never get any answers from anyone. I don't know if they read my things or not. It's
They don't want
possible.
competition from you.
Yes, well, or they, despite how open-minded they look, they will never give up on Einstein. They're all in love with Einstein and probably Newton. So they may look like they're on your side, but I'm telling you, they probably are not. Hmm.
We've often heard that science progresses one funeral at a time. Means they have to wait till the people who believe certain thoughts die off, of course.
It's worse than you think. Everything that I've written, it's not for us or our humanity. There's no hope there. The end times will have to come, and it's going to be for the next humanity. They are going to rediscover it. They will still have some technology. They will find it in a cave. This is for the next humanity that I wrote all this. I'm never going to reach out in this one.
I have the name of somebody that you should contact. What is his last name, Jennifer? Travis from Skinwalker Ranch. He's the,
Travis
what?
Taylor.
Travis Taylor. Yeah, tell him to contact Travis Taylor.
He might
Give
be
it-
more open-minded. Yes,
Yes,
I
yes.
don't have Travis's email address, but I may see him next week at Contact in the Desert, or next month at the
Yeah,
end of this month that he might be at Contact in the Desert. So
yeah.
Travis,
Tell him.
Travis.
Travis Taylor. He is a scientist that's on a television program called Skinwalker Ranch, and he's
Right.
so often on Ancient Aliens and other places like that. But he is a mainstream scientist. He's a physicist, and he worked with some aspect of our space program. I'm not exactly sure which one he worked with. I don't know if it was NASA or some other space program, but he's an interesting fellow. So
So some of them are open-minded. Some of them are believers, and they can't really talk about it. So we're not exactly aware. But yeah, maybe that's one that could probably be trusted.